Here on the Confident Defense podcast, we're focused on one thing, and that's innovation. And that's specifically innovation in security. One of the ways that innovation is brought to market is through CEOs of startups who are bringing something brand new to market, who have recognized that there is a gap, a hole, an opportunity that they can bring a solution to come fill. So when I met Amit and we had this conversation around authorization, he was a prime candidate to get on the show because we as an industry have spent tons of money on the authentication part of the story. And we spent even more money on the detection and response that comes from the auditing and the behavioral analysis. But we haven't invested in authorization, the bit in the middle that says, is this identity and service? Are they supposed to? Do they have permissions? Have they been granted access to these other services, identities, resources? And are they doing it in just the right time because of their attributes, their roles, their whatever the reason may be? And the reason is because authorization is hard and mostly custom. And every time a developer wants to build an authorization framework for an application, they have to start from scratch. Enter build.security. Build.security is a company that is a platform, not a product. And this is what I really liked about them. It's the fact that as a developer, you don't have to go and reinvent the wheel every single time. That they can truly be your de facto toolkit for integrating authorization into your enterprise or custom application. So right after this, we're going to play a little clip from their marketing material just to kind of give you an idea of what they're bringing to market so you have the right frame of reference when you listen to this conversation. This conversation with Amit's pretty jam-packed. We touch on a lot of things, but always centered around the pain and problems that come from authorization. So please, enjoy the conversation. If you find something of value, hit the subscribe button below, give us a like, or throw something in the comments. Love to hear some feedback from you. And remember, we're coming forward with the Discord community as well. So please let us know if you'd like an invite to that as well, and we'll bring you on there so we can continue the conversation. Please enjoy this wonderful conversation with Amit, the CEO of build.security.
We need role-based access control in the app.
You got it.
Oh, and the customer should be able to customize the roles and permissions themselves.
Yep, coming up in a few weeks.
One more thing. I need you to restrict access exclusively to resource owners in Salesforce with open Jira tickets. Oops, we need to make sure everything is logged, audited, and reported to our SIM. That won't take long, right?
You know, it doesn't have to be this hard. Meet build.security, the platform that enables developers to easily express authorization policy as code. In just a few minutes instead of months, build.security helps you easily build data-driven use cases, like role-based and attribute-based access controls for your APIs and custom applications. Our unique control plane and sidecar containers help product teams easily author, distribute, enforce, and manage their access policies at scale. So what are you waiting for? Let us take it from here. Visit us at build.security to learn more.
Pioneering solutions, transformational technology, and inspirational leaders. I'm your host, Connor Sherman, and this is the Confident Defense Podcast. Welcome to the Confident Defense Podcast. I'm your host, Connor, and today we have something pretty special. We have a CEO who is building a company that simplifies how access control are built and enforced inside high consequence software. It's an area in security that is in desperate need of disruption. It's something that treats engineers and developers as first-class citizens, and while giving security leaders visibility into the security of their applications. It's something I haven't seen on the market yet. So when I had the opportunity to connect and sit down for this conversation, I was pretty excited. So Amit, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Connor. Excited to be here.
So you and I started this conversation a couple of months ago, and I started exploring what is build.security that this startup that you've built and you've brought to market. And it got really excited about it because I haven't seen an organization like this that you've built before. Like when I look at the kind of the bookends of the AAA, you've got the authentication, which is the auth-n. Are you allowed in the house? You've got the auditing. What did you do when you were inside the house? But that AuthZ, that middle A in the AAA, seems to have been completely ignored or at least marginalized inside with security investment. So I was hoping you could just kind of start with build.security, this company that you've brought forth. What problems exactly are you guys trying to tackle? And why did you decide like this was the right solution to invest in and build a company in? Like why focus on that middle A that is often forgotten?
Yeah, sure. I won't say it's forgotten. It's probably just one of the more complex and difficult problems to solve. And the trigger was just many customer calls that emphasized the need and a solution for the authorization piece. So Build Security was, we started a journey with a vision to help developers with many security functions. Authorization was one of them, but not the only one. But as time went by and we talked with more and more customers, we realized that when I say we, it's my partner and I, we realized that authorization is yet to be solved. 100% of the more sophisticated companies out there built their own authorization solutions. Okay, so they use off-the-shelf products to do authentication and maybe auditing, but authorization is largely homegrown. And this is obviously something that needs to be fixed. It cannot continue like this, and that every company that develops a software needs to build their own authorization. So if it's several roles and permission, that's one thing. But when it starts to be more fine-grained and more attribute-based, it gets tough. And this is what we want to solve.
Yeah, okay, that makes complete sense, because the idea that like everyone's got the R&D budget of like a JP Morgan Chase or something, it's obviously ridiculous. That's not the space that we live in. So everybody rolling their own authorization, their AuthZ, is something that just doesn't scale. And you're right. I think like a lot of the security community has like where we have gotten up with like least privilege and privileged access management has been like, are you allowed into the server? Yes or no? Are you allowed into accessing a database? Yes or no? But we've kind of seems to have stopped there. Yes, there are people who deviate from that norm and who have really got it dialed in, but it is a difficult problem to solve, and especially when you start to get into things that you were just mentioning, where you have attribute-based authorization versus just role-based authorization. So
Right.
Can you just take a moment and step us back and just kind of like lay out why is RBAC or role-based access or attribute ABAC broken today? Like why is it so hard and so difficult?
It consists from multiple factors. So first, you need to, from a product perspective, you need to first define the hierarchy and the roles and the permissions. Right, it needs to go hand in hand with the product. You need to go and think what will be how the product will look like months and years from now. So you want the system to be flexible enough to accommodate future enhancements and requirements. And then that's for maybe just the roles and permissions, but sometimes you want to add another layer, or I'll say maybe dimension of attributes. So you're a manager, but you can manage only these accounts, right? Or only in these regions, or only in these countries, or only these projects. So that's kind of an attribute that you want to add on the identity or on the resource. And then there is another layer of sophistication that you want to allow your customers to be able to change and define their own roles and permissions. So if you want to go and sell your product to the larger enterprises, this is something you probably should have because they require that. and that's a very challenging task to do engineering wise.
Yeah, man, that seems like when you have to think through, it makes sense why it's such a difficult problem, right? So like if you have to think through not only just the security of your own application, what system resources can talk to what, but then you've got to extend that out so that you can give it to the hand of end users who are paying you and these customers who aren't part of your security team, who aren't thinking about that. They're just thinking about their usability and their accessibility. And so you've got, it's like a Rubik's Cube that fights back. It's a difficult problem to solve. And as you get a little bit of progress, it rolls back. So that kind of makes sense why you've decided to invest in your time and your energy and your career in building this now build.security, this company. Now, I do want to dive into the weeds a little bit more about how you are solving this problem. Like we'll get a little bit into like open policy agent and things, but there was something you alluded to at the beginning here, and I want to kind of just step back to that. So build.security wasn't set out to do role-based, to do AuthZ, to be an AuthZ company, right? From our conversation, so it was like this idea of like a normalized security language, and then there was a pivot later on. Can you explain that journey, like how you got started and the excitement around that, and then how AuthZ moved, how AuthZ became the focus?
Yeah, so not much to add from what I said before. I'll risk repeating myself, but there were like multiple security functions that we wanted to offer as an open source project to developers. Encryption, HSM as a service, auditing, authentication and authorization. But then, talking with customers, we realized that authorization is a very big and a very unsolved problem. So we double clicked on that, and our mission currently is to be the de facto authorization company for developers, giving an end-to-end solution. So you'll have, client-side applications, React, Angular, Vue, backend plugins and middlewares and SDKs that'll give you function level and HTTP server middlewares to intercept requests on the API level and make sure everything is authorized. Talking with our packages, of course, from the client side, and a policy decision point that is very performant based on open policy agent that resides, sits right beside your application. So it's very performant, very latency aware.
Yeah.
I talked a little bit about the solution, but this is so we started from a wide range of security functions, and then we double clicked on authorization. But once you have the SDKs in place and you have the policy decision points right beside your application, you'll be able to do more security stuff along the way.
I think this is a great thought for any thought leader out there in the security space who's trying to tackle these problems, right? So as CISOs or as heads of security at these high growth companies where their money is their software, that's how they generate revenue, it's how they bring their brand to market. This idea that we can now for the first time really have a simplified way of bringing authorization into the application right at a performant manner where there's this management layer on top of it. I think that management layer almost sounds far too enterprisey, but really that sense of like you have this plug and play model of where the policies go. So talk to me like about build security. Like what's the so you mentioned earlier that it's like the de facto AuthZ for developers. What makes it so attractive for those in the engineering community and in the developer community? Why this versus just open policy agent and just using kind of a raw open source version of that?
Okay, so it depends on the use case, and sometimes an open source project like open policy agent will be good enough. Depends what you want to build and how complex it is. But what's attractive about it is the managed fashion, of course. Okay, if you have multiple applications in multiple languages and stacks and frameworks, and you want to have a single pane of glass to see all the policies for all of them, you can go ahead and build it on your own, or you can use build.security. And developers are all into They want to build a product. They want to do it in the right way. They want to be future compatible. So they don't want to uh, build things the wrong way that will cause headaches in the future. So they're looking for the right solutions for the mission, and they're looking to make it as fast as possible. So all the the narrative of consuming open source and plug and play and it just works. This is what drives us. This is our mission to be deployed as fast as possible and integrated as fast as possible and easy to use. That's one of the main value propositions and main focus for us.
Got it. Yeah. Security at speed. I love it. It's like you don't have to tell people to slow down the car, which can make the car safer, give the developer the keys and say, drive as safe or as fast as slow as you want, but like, it'll be fine. I love that.
I'm thinking about this in another way. I'm thinking, for developers, I'm saying this will save you time. This is built in the right way. Okay. The architecture is solid. We have future features that you'll be able to add when needed. And by the way, it's also secure. So, you have security off your back.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that as well. It's like when you start to think through AuthZ and its implications, you almost have to do the impossible, which is completely future-proof it. And that's what your team is doing, right? You're kind of looking around the corner, you're understanding who are the players and that we need to pull into this to continue to make it easier for a growing community of engineers. So you can be like, okay, authentication comes from this place, the enforcement layer comes from these agents, and then the policy looks like so-and-so. But that sense that you have an opportunity to now save time and then have a partner who can see around the corner so you don't have to, as an engineer, future-proof and think through every permutation of every scenario. It's pretty attractive. And I also liked what you mentioned there about the managed section of this too, right? When I think about my journey as in the security community and others, when we think managed, for me, what it means to be a scale. It means the idea that I'm not having to rebuild a foundation over and over and over again every time we want to do a different permutation of an application. So the fact there is this managed layer, which is just performance, it's stable, it's there, and then we build on top of that is very attractive to a lot of people in the security leadership community.
Yeah, I agree. And you have not only scale you get, I can give you more policy specific features that you can do when you have a managed solution. So imagine you want to build a new policy, you want to test it against real traffic that went through the system in the past week. So once you have the decision logs shipped into the control plane and you're authoring the policy in the control plane, now you have the ability to do just that. You can have IntelliSense and autocomplete and auto suggestions on policy and how policy should look like. This privilege concept, and of course auditing and single sign-on and all those things that you want to have in a managed solution.
That's pretty fantastic, actually. The ability to put in some logic and just watch and make sure it doesn't break anything, make sure it actually works the way you expect it before you flip the switch and do the enforcement layer.
Exactly. And to see violations, of course, if they happen in reality.
Yeah, I can imagine this being rather transformative for a security operations team as well, where we've been very focused on, that's my experience, right? That's my career's blue team all the way through. So our general point of truth is the log data that's emitted after the fact, but we very rarely get into the application itself to see who did what where. It's just after the fact, then we run something, and you're always kind of trying to piece together the story like a detective versus having someone who was there watching the crime happen, as it were, which would be, in this case, build.security and then the audit trail that's there.
Yep, exactly. And you can test new policies without having them being really enforced. So what if, you can ask the question, what if this was the policy, right? And now see the data that goes in and make a better decision on how the policy should look like.
So let's take a step. So as exciting as this is, and we're gonna keep going here, I do want to just take a quick detour down to your journey before, because you could look at someone's LinkedIn and you're like, oh my gosh, you've like done everything. But there's so much more to that. So you started out your career in in cybersecurity intelligence. Please correct me where I go wrong there. And then I saw like you come through, you were part of some pretty successful companies, acquisition by Symantec, so on and so forth. So you've been in
Right.
this security space for a long time. So how did you get started? And yeah, what brought you from like beginning to where we are today?
So I started as probably as a young teenager or even a kid with software. But my real experience started in the IDF in the 8200 unit. After that, it was common 20 years ago to do degrees in universities and colleges. Today, it's not like that anymore. I think people start working right away after the army, and at least in Israel. I don't know in the States how it is, but in Israel, it's getting more and more common that very talented guys, developers, engineers, just straight from the army, they have enough experience to start giving value to the industry, and that's amazing if you ask me. So I went and did my undergraduate degree. I worked as an embedded engineer, actually, very far away from security. But a friend of mine co-founded a company, a cybersecurity company, and I joined him as the first employee in that company. And since then, I think 7 years ago, we got acquired by Symantec, and then we got acquired by Broadcom. And then at that time, I decided to move on and start something of my own. So this is like 20 years and
Yes.
very fast.
Starting small, growing, behemoth Symantec, and now we're back to transforming the world with startups.
Transforming the AuthZ, yeah. Exactly.
Yes, at least that space. Well, God knows we need it. So when you're looking at so what brought you into the security space? Was it just the challenges of it all? Was it just like you kind of got into this space through the introduction of your friend? You're like, okay, there's no way I can ever get out of this space. Do you see yourself moving out of like a pure cybersecurity industry in the future, or is this kind of home for you?
I think the challenge is, first of all, we're not a typical cybersecurity company. We're not about, finding vulnerabilities and remedies and doing all that kind of stuff. Like even in Symantec, it was a cybersecurity product, but we wrote a browser, a web isolation technology. So the challenges were scale, were performance, were databases and data structures and algorithms and stuff like that. And here it's pretty much the same. So at the end of the day, the product is something that gives you security, better security, and helps developers to do that easily. But the same challenges and the same principles are pretty much the same I think in other companies that are not cybersecurity. Okay, so I hope I answered the question, but
No, that's great. And actually, one of the things I heard when you were saying that was, a lot of other security companies are really looking for bad things to stop, right? An EDR company, an IDS company, whatever, right? They're saying, okay, badness is coming, let's just stop it. So their job is to find bad. It's as if you've got the other side of that coin and you're building tools so people can build the right things safer, whether it's back in the browser isolation, all the way to what we're doing now, build security. It really is, how do we take the good guys and give them the tools they need so they can build better, faster, safer? So it really is the other side of the coin.
Exactly, to prevent and not after the fact and stuff like that.
Right. But that means you also have the challenges of being like, your operations, your near runtime, near line performance in production, all those challenges that come with that maybe other security firms who are trying to stop things aren't keeping top of mind, because their value is, did the bad thing not happen? Versus here is like, did the good thing actually happen within all the KPIs we have?
Exactly. To have our piece of software running in our customers' environments, being delegated with all the requests that goes into the product after authentication has been made. Those are in the thousands, in the 10 of thousands, maybe in the millions during a few minutes. You need to be up and running all the time. You need to be performant. You need to, everything needs to be logged as well.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you do that at scale and, um, and make it simple?
So yes, so go back to that. So let's talk about simplicity for a second. So you've shown me a little bit of the product. I've had gotten a small taste of it. And what I really liked about this was this idea that there was this non-engineering view of the platform as well. Right. So you had all the SDKs and we have all the ways for the engineers to integrate. But then there's the CISO and his team or her team that they have an opportunity to kind of have a bird's eye view, understand everything. So if we go back to the product, can you kind of just walk us through kind of why we haven't talked about why this is helpful for engineers to build safer products, but like from a CISO's perspective, as they're looking to integrate this, what are some of the core problems that you're solving for them, and what's their experience look like once they get onboarded with this platform? Right, nothing's going to we'll encourage everyone at the end of this conversation to come to the website and book a demo and actually see this hand to hand, because I don't think it's quite going to do it justice, because it was pretty powerful. But let's just talk through what's the CISO's view of build security?
Okay, so I don't think the CISO, and I'll be happy to meet those CISOs that will want to do actual changes using the control plane, but usually it'll be more towards reporting and visibility into things that they didn't have visibility into up until today. Okay, so imagine as a CISO, you have a footprint or something like an SDK that runs in each and every application in the stack, and all the API requests go through those SDKs, and policy decisions are made on top of all of those requests and responses, by the way. So you can have policies on the request and on the response as well. So if the request is, get data, you can filter the data on the way back if you want. So there are many kind of policy decisions that you can do. And then, it's just a way to experiment maybe with new policies. And what if this will get deployed? How privileged am I in my network between services and to the end users and contractors and third parties and the internal threats? So there are many things you can do with a platform, and this is where we want to be as a platform that will give you a way to offer your own policies, and we truly envision a time when new policies will get deployed that we didn't anticipate. New use cases that we didn't even anticipate.
That's the beautiful thing about building a platform, right?
Yeah.
Is that you are really enabling people to say, here are the bricks, go build the building in whichever way you wish.
Yeah. Hence build
build
building blocks, build security, the building blocks for security.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was thinking, like, through the CISO story here, there is a sense of, you talk about policies, inbound policies and outbound policies. I mean, that has huge implications when you start dealing with privacy concerns, right? Did someone come in? Great. So they came in through one geo, but they reached into GDPR data, and that's about to go out, and it's about to go outbound to some other data center that's outside of what we expect that data center to go through. So there's a sense of, like, you can now say, okay, we have an inbound policy, only the right people have access to it. But then on the outbound policy, okay, make sure only the right requests are going out to the right areas and remaining compliant with a lot of these security, not headache, I don't call them a privacy headache, but like the privacy legislation burden that we're trying to grapple with and embed into our software. It seems like a really powerful way to operationalize that.
Yep, I agree. You'll need the buy-in of the engineering that will hook this into the right places in the code, in the application, or in the proxies, which is a fantastic way to get us deployed. But then you have visibility into things that you didn't have before, and context. The context of the requests is everything. So you might have, as you said, access to a specific database, but it doesn't mean you have access to everything that is stored in that database. Same goes to an endpoint. So you have access to the endpoint, but it doesn't mean that you can do everything with that. That you need to have access to everything that endpoint exposes. So maybe you want to filter something on the way back, right?
Yeah.
According to the location according to the whether you're coming from a trusted device, yes or no, according to the time of day. I don't know. Endless amount of use cases that people are just inventing and they want to enforce, and we want to give them the option to do that without limitation. We're not giving you just source IP, just a port, just network-wise access controls. We're giving you, hey, okay, this is a policy language. Basically, you can do whatever you want. And if you want to use the drag and drop components, be our guest and do that. It's like a low-code kind of platform.
Yeah, for me, just because this is my personal bias, I'm excited about the forensics capabilities of this, the detection and response, the ability to say, okay, we had a web app tier, we had a web tier attack that came through. What do they touch? How do they touch it? And how do they get through? What vulnerability they exploit? And then what was their access controls after? So that ability to tie that whole story together, I mean, that's what excites me the most. I know everyone's got other things they're going to really latch in on, but like for me, I'm like, yeah, it's finally we have something that helps us with that story.
And that's part of what you just mentioned is part of is one of the major reasons why authorization is still an unsolved problem, because it's always unique. Every company needs a different kind of AuthZ solution. It's a little bit different than authentication, right? Authentication, there is probably a handful of ways of how to do authentication, and there are very good products out there that pretty much solve this puzzle. But authorization is always unique, and it's always homegrown. So the only solution to this problem is a platform that will give you the ability to do your own thing. So if you're interested in forensics and compliance, you can do that. And if you're a fanatic of I don't know, like very granular, fine-grained access controls, you can do that. And you have multiple personas in the company that can use the platform.
That's pretty awesome. So where's Build Security going? What's the future here? I mean, we're talking about really transforming an unsolved problem. You're building this platform that, like you said, there are multiple eyes inside the organization who can now use it. You can inject this performant SDK right at the app layer, so to make sure there's no issues with performance in production. So what's the future? What does 5 years look like for Build Security?
Being the de facto authorization company, okay?
Yeah.
Solving simple problems like role-based access controls and attribute-based access control, which is a little bit more difficult, and then another dimension or level of authorization that will give your customers the ability to customize the roles and the permissions in your product, okay, using a portal that we will provide. So it won't be, so from a product perspective, if it won't be you won't hear from engineering. This will take months to implement. It will be easy as single sign-on. It will be easy as multi-factor authentication. These are off-the-shelf solutions today, and it wasn't like this 10 years ago. So to answer your question, 5 years from now, I want to see authorization solved in a way that it will be days, maybe even hours to implement and integrate with your product. That's it.
I love it. I mean, I know the transformation that single sign-ons had in the last few years, where you can just quite simply say, like, I go to this catalog, hit the go button, exchange a few URLs, and magic's happening. So the ability to now do this with authorization is going to goes back to that word, transformative, for engineers to be able to build this into their platform.
Yep.
So, I mean, where should people learn more? People are excited. They want to get connected. We'll link to everything in the show notes, but how do people get that demo? How do people get their hands on this platform for the first time?
Everything is on the website. Everything is on GitHub. We're very transparent with everything that we're doing, even this podcast, of course. We're working on, giving the platform as to be self-onboarding, so you'll be able to sign up, sign in, start playing with the system, see value right away in a managed fashion. And if And if you like it, you'll be able to integrate it into your product. So this is where we're going.
Perfect. I love it. Anything that really continues that story, that narrative of empowering and decentralization of security controls right down to the engineers so they can build better. Cool. Well, everyone, thank you so much for today. The links will be in the show notes. If you're interested right now, jump over to build.security. So it's build.security. There's no .com at the end, just build.security. We'll link to the GitHub. We'll link to the LinkedIn pages where you can explore the company and the team behind it. So until next time, thank you.